I'm live. No drop frames. Okay, that's good. But there are some drop frames. 2.5%. That's not terrible. Not the greatest. Not terrible. Okay. Just waiting for people to show up. Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever a Spider-Man does. Give me chat. Yeah, the Twitch needs to make money somehow. Unless you want to give me money. And then I can set up no ads. But also, let me know who you are, Baroness of Storms. Please. Okay, just checking. I want to make sure everyone gets the credit that they are due. So I appreciate that. Yep. Edgy is where Twitch is at, that's for sure. Welcome, welcome. Oh, good, the air conditioner went off. There's no low hum anymore. If you end up hearing some squeaky sounds, that is the floor above and people walking. Well, mainly one person walking. Or other sounds. Things falling. Dogs, you know. Just one. Just one, but he acts like 5. So he acts like 5 different dogs. But he has a ring, a chew ring, that is virtually indestructible, and we have hardwood, so that's right above me. Oh, there he is. He's right there. I don't know if you can see him. Hi, Murphy. What's up, bud? Here, come up. Up, up, up. Come here. Oh, Jesus. He's right there. Say hi, Murphy. You have hair on your mouth. You're a weirdo. Yeah. Cool. Random facts tonight. No, I don't know. Maybe. It depends. It depends. I don't know. Whatever comes to me, really. Oy. If I play music, can you hear it? I don't think you can hear it. Let me know if you can hear it. Okay, good, because I don't want to get flagged for copyright violation. Bye, Murphy! Can we have a bring our dog to class day? When he's less crazy. It's on the horizon. We'll have to see. It may be maybe a Tuesday or a Thursday as opposed to a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I don't know. That works for both of you, really. We're gonna get started in a few minutes. Wait for some more people to jump in. But I did say 7:30, so I don't want to keep you two waiting for too long. Excuse me. Okay. Hi, Stephanie. All right. I think we can get. I was looking for something to make sure my audio was going to be good, but we can go ahead and get started with the three of you, and we'll let others trickle in as they can. So I said, bring questions. I hope at least the three of you have questions that will carry us somewhat. There are 6 people watching. So get us started, whoever wants to get us started. If you are watching and you are in my class, you should probably say something in chat so I know that you are so I know that you get credit. And yeah, you can ask questions about the quiz format. I reserve the right to say you will have to wait. Well, the short answer, the multiple choice are 1 point each, and the short answers are generally speaking 3 to 5 points each, depending on how many there are. So the short answers have a little bit more weight, but there are fewer questions, if that makes sense. I think it comes out to that the multiple choice, I mean, in total has more, but I think they're both important. They're both important, really. Shlasta, who are you? So I can make sure you get your extra credit. How many questions are going to be on the quiz? There are going to be 28, something like that. Oh, okay, Jesse. All right. The different parts of cognition. So are you talking about like transformation, use, store, retrieval? Katerina? I guess I can answer your question without you actually answering my question. Try to think of mnemonics, maybe? That might be a good way to remember multiple piece answers, I guess. It's mixed together. McKenna, I assume that's you. waiting for everyone to catch up to answer to other questions. I'm listening to music right now, so if I start dancing because I'm waiting, then you know why. I would say the spotlight metaphor is both selective and limited. It's a metaphor for both of the features of attention that we talked about today, Miranda. And then Jesse, is there an easy distinction to remember the difference between top-down and bottom-up processing? I would say that, think of a building. Most buildings have to be built from the ground floor, right? The bottom up. That's essentially what you're doing with your perceptions. The ground floor is the sensory information. Sorry, I was getting mixed up on where I wanted to take that analogy. So you've got your base level, your basement, or whatever. That's your sensation. You got to build on top of that. Okay, that creates the various pieces of bottom-up processing. And so when you switch the order, top-down is all the way at the very top, the nice penthouse of the building that you've made. That is what you know, and you're going down to the sensations. So that's the way that I remember it. That's my mnemonic for the differences between top-down and bottom-up. I hope that helps just a little bit more. The lag may not be fully on your end, Kat. I am dropping about 4.5% of frames because my wife is working upstairs and probably watching something on Netflix. So, bandwidth. Okay, have I missed anything? Will we need to know relative dates for the people we study? No, that's, as I mentioned today with names, dates are even less important. The time period, probably important. So knowing that the cognitive revolution happened in the mid 20th century versus like the late 1800s is a good idea. But yeah, not specific dates. Do we need to know most or all the different experiments that were done by different people? I would say yes. That's a good idea. Knowing the experiments and the people who did them serves two functions. One, you get a ground for effects. I don't do it for every single effect we talk about. I don't have a list of researchers and experiments for every single thing that I talk about. But for the ones that I do, because that I have talked about the people and the experiments and the methods behind those experiments, then yeah, I think you should know those. Those are the important ones. And of course, the textbook has way more researchers and experiments and descriptions of methods and everything that I talk about in class. But what I talk about in class is what I think is important. So yeah, I would say that if it's in the slides and the methods and the people are in it, then I think you should remember those. Sure, no problem. This is fun. I hope everyone's having fun. They can do whatever they want. They can watch Netflix as well as watching me. I think this is a win-win-win for everyone. And you can see my dog, but he left. He's no longer on the couch. I have slides if anybody has specific questions, as you can see where I obviously right here. Okay. Who Elia, I think, is BFSA Gamer Canfield, I assume. Does Cengage MindTap cover what we will need for the quiz? I think both MindTap and the reading checks are more comprehensive. I tend to test from lecture. Not saying that those two places, the textbook and MindTap, aren't fair game, because as your syllabus says, they are fair game, but I tend to test from my lectures, because that's what I think is important. I would know everything you can about Gestalt, Cat. Sorry. We didn't go over all of it. There's so much more. We go through way more stuff in sensation and perception. Just confirm B-FISA Gamer Canfield that you are Elia, so I can make sure you get the extra credit. Okay, good. I mean, I was pretty sure, but I just wanted to make that clear. Okay. Well, Kat had asked, what do we need to know about the principles of automatic perceptual grouping, and I just expanded on that to mean that everything that I talked about in class about Gestalt psychology or Gestalt perception is what you should know. So everything we talked about in class about Gestalt is what I mean there. So everything you can remember about Gestalt. Okay, inversion. Cool. All right, I'm going to pull up the actual slide so I can reference. Excuse you. Didn't click on it. Okay. Okay, so I have the picture up here. Up here, sorry. Cursor was in the right place. I have two screens, so if you've been to my office, you know I'm a fan of two monitors. So we have the eyeball. This is Miranda's question about the inverse projection problem. So the retina is a two-dimensional surface. We only have one layer of photopigment cells on it. So, excuse me. So any image that falls on it becomes two-dimensional. Okay? So that's what I mean by ambiguous. So these three shapes right here all have the same retinal image. And so sensation alone cannot determine what shape it is. Does that make sense? So these three objects, these three quadrilaterals, produce the same retinal image, and if all we had was a sensation process, then we'd think they were all the same, which is what a camera does. It's only a sensation processor. It only extracts light from not light. That's what your camera does, the CMOS sensor inside your camera. But because we have a brain attached to our eyeballs that can do a lot more processing, we can project outward from the retinal image So to speak, this is a conceptual projection. Nothing actually projects from our eyeballs. Okay? And so we can project out from there and determine that it can actually be a number of different shapes. An infinite amount of shapes, to be sure. Maybe not infinite, but close to it. So that is the inverse projection problem. Something that our eyes can do that a camera cannot do. Okay? I hope that helps, Miranda. Okay, what else do we got here? I won't answer specific questions about what is and what is not on the quiz, so if we went over it in class, then it is probably fair game. Hi, Kate. Get to you in just one second. Would the meaning focus on chapters? That is random. I set a goal of trying to be equal. Focus on chapters. It just depends on how much time we spend on stuff. So, if I were to make that evaluation for this quiz, more on perception and attention, because we spent 2 days on each, both chapters, and I suppose less on chapter 1. But what I tend to do is I tend to create a big test and then cut it down. And so what ends up being left is kind of random. Structuralism and Gestaltism. So structuralism is the school of psychology that is the structure of the mind. We need to know the structure of the mind in order to understand how the mind works. And Gestalt is in response to that in a certain way, because Gestalt is about the whole rather than the parts, so structuralism is about the parts. In Gestalt psychology, the whole is different than the sum of the parts. So in my initial example of Gestalt, where we talked about pointillism, and I showed the 2 different pointillistic things. I think I have it in this one, right? Somewhere around here, yeah. So I have these 2 pointillistic pieces of art. So structuralism would be like, oh, let's look at each individual point. Let's look at each individual point. So each dot in this, as you can see, the Surat bathing at the Osnieres. I don't know how to speak French. And this portrait of Lincoln, okay? Structuralism would be like, let's look at each one of those separately to see how they contribute to the whole. Gestalt is like, no. We don't need to look at each of them separately. We actually need to look at the whole, because the whole is better than each of these parts individually. Okay? So that's different. That's the difference, Kate. You betcha. No worries. More questions, more questions. Everybody's got some questions. I hope y'all enjoying the low hum of the air conditioner right above my head. It's faint, but it's there. Distinctive features theory, sure. Let me find that. Okay. So, in bottom-up processing, Gibson said that if you... actually put the Navon figure up. If you have objects that come in to you that you've maybe never seen before, okay, you are going to look at the global features of that object first, pull what you can gather from those global features, and then you are going to look at the local features, the smaller things that make up the larger bits. Okay, so on the Navon figure, we have H's made of H's and S's, and the S's made of H's and S's. Okay, so you're going to see the distinctive features theory suggests that you are going to see the large letters first. Of course you do. I don't think there's anybody who's going to be like, nah, I saw the little letters first. No, most, if not all people are going to say, yeah, I saw 2 H's and 2 S's. Okay? And then you're like, oh, wait, the H's and the S's are made of smaller H's and S's. Okay? And you can see in my notes here that when participants heard the letter name H, okay, they responded yes quickly. It's just, did you hear H, yes or no? No matter what the small letters were. So if you were told you're looking for an H, did you see an H? People are like, yeah, I did. Okay? Because who cares what the smaller letters are? Those little features don't affect your global judgment. Okay? But if you're told, what are the small letters? H or S? Well, you're going to look at the global features first no matter what. And so when you look at these global features of the S's, or the S's versus the H, you're actually going to spot this S made out of S's faster than you're going to spot this H made out of S's. Okay? Because the global features are processed first. Always. Okay? Does that make sense? Does that help? I think the best thing to remember about distinctive features is that the way that we perceive the world is gist first, details later, and distinctive features theory describes that in a sort of more precise way. Okay. Explain how speech segmentation works a bit more. Yeah, sure. So this is top down. So Kat asked how speech segmentation works. So let me pull that up. Where did I put it? Where did I put it? Right here. So by the time you are an expert reader, so we'll say 10 years old, somewhere around there, you have a pretty good handle on words and sounds that make up words. We are limited by our mouth. We're going to go into more detail about speech segmentation and words and language and stuff later in the semester. But when you are, we have a limitation on what we can produce with our mouths. Some languages use more of the mouth and the tongue and the teeth to produce more syllables, but for the most part, we are limited by what we can produce. And so when we become expert readers and talkers, we know, and using the word know here makes it top-down processing. We know when words end and begin in the same pattern of speech, okay? And this even works for the sounds produced in other languages, because it's still top-down processing. The ability to split the sound segments into that was this word, and then this coming sound is the next word, in a language we don't understand because of the limitations of language, okay? And I think that's all I really want you to know about that. That it's a top-down process because you know it. It changes the way you perceive sounds. Okay? Unconscious inference. Sure. We are moving right along in this area here. So it's not as fresh because it was last week. So it's pretty good. We're moving straight along here. We're moving right along. So this is also top-down processing, and this is one of the very first theories of top-down processing. Okay, so Helmholtz was like, we have figure A. We see the world in 3 dimensions. And because we see the world in 3 dimensions, we reprocess. I don't know if you heard this, Kate, if you were in the chat when we were talking about the inverse projection problem. We see our 3-dimensional world in 2 dimensions because everything that hits our eyeballs becomes 2 dimensions on a flat retina. There's no depth to our photopigment cells, and so everything becomes 2 dimensions. We reprocess in our visual systems in our brain. I know I shouldn't be talking about the brain for cognitive psychology. I told you I wasn't. But we reprocess 2-dimensional images as 3 dimensions in our brains, and that's how we perceive the world, because the world is 3 dimensions, right? We have a y, an x, and a z. And so when we're presented with something like A, sure, we can view it like a 2-dimensional representation, which is C. It's a blue rectangle with an L-shaped red rectangle. They're on the same depth plane. But that's not how we see the world. That's not a common figure. Going back to Gestalt for a second, even though this theory predates Gestalt, Gestalt fits with it. Because B is most likely what we're going to infer unconsciously when we see figure A. It's actually B. Blue rectangle is occluding the red rectangle because it's in front of it, because there's depth to it, okay? Not C. C is a 2-dimensional world, and like I said, it could be. A could be C, but it's unlikely to be C because we've made this unconscious inference about it being B. Does that help, Kate? Let me know if you need further explanation. My LaCroix is done. Sad. Recognition by components. This is the fun one because it's geons. Geons. So the idea is that Biederman was a fan of shapes, and our world is composed of 3-dimensional shapes. And so he just distilled those 3-dimensional shapes into common ones. Now these 5 here aren't the only ones. It's just useful. I'm not entirely sure how many geons there actually are, but most of the complex shapes we see in our world are a combination of these building blocks, we'll say. So if you're familiar with Lincoln Logs, the building set, to keep our Lincoln theme going, apparently, those individual quote-unquote wood pieces by themselves don't actually make anything, but when you put them together, they make a house. I mean, that's the best I can do on that one right now. So we have this set of geons in our perceptual stores, cognitive term, and when we encounter new objects, we put them together. So you see a lampshade, you put the cone and the cylinder together to make the lampshade. The pail, you put the macaroni with the cylinder and you get a pail. Okay. Kate, so you are referencing your... Would this kind of fit with a good continuation? I mean, that particular... Oh, okay, so I see what you're asking. Okay, going back to unconscious inference. Where did I put it? This particular example would fit with pregnans, but unconscious inference is bigger than that. Because it has to do with likelihood of things occurring. So, it depends on what you're looking at and whether it fits with Gestalt. I think the theory is a little bit broader than that, but it's a good way to connect it and, help you remember both of those things. That's elaboration. Good work. Symbolic distance effect. Symbolic distance effect. Where did I put that? I don't remember where that is, Jesse. Sorry. Oh, yes! From the first one. Here we go. Yeah. This was a symbolic distance effect. We're gonna go way more into this, so it's not something that you'll be tested on. It was just an example that I used. So yeah, you don't have to worry about this one too much. Just an explanation of the mental transformation. We'll talk more about it when we get to imagery later in the semester. You betcha. Attentional blink, Miranda. Yes. No, that was the wrong one. Where am I? There it is. Okay. So, attentional blink is the requisite loss of attentional capacity when you are shifting your attention. So, if you think about the spotlight again, when you move the spotlight, imagine that the light goes off for a second. Okay? And so that's what the attentional blink is. I think the easiest way to remember this, for me, is that it is quite literally a blink. Okay? So, if you are doing a rapid serial visual presentation paradigm, this kind of task, you, whoopsies. You are asking a person to attend to M's. If that's the only thing that you need to attend to, great. Always looking for M's. But if then you add a second target and you say, look for X's, now you're asking somebody to do two things at once, essentially. And these letters are appearing every 10th of a second. Okay? And so when they're appearing every 10th of a second, and they're very close together, well, every time that you actually blink, you miss out on letters. Because a blink takes longer than a 10th of a second. It doesn't feel like it, but it does. Slightly longer, about 200 to 250 milliseconds a blink takes. So if these two are one letter apart, well, that's 230 milliseconds right there. And so you're going to miss that. And that's what the graph that I showed you in the slides last week, but then I also showed you today from CogLab, is that when they're very close together, you end up with a situation where you're actually very bad at this task. You don't see them. You actually cannot report seeing them more often than not. So this is less than 50%. This is worse than chance. Okay. Whereas if you're only looking for the M, you're pretty much at ceiling. You know, sometimes you miss it, sometimes you miss it, but 9 out of 10 times you're gonna get it. Okay. But when you're looking for two targets and those two targets are right next to each other, you're gonna miss it, and that is because you have shifted your attention and you don't have, like, capacity goes to 0 in that moment. Okay. Which is about 300 milliseconds or so. Okay. So I said dates weren't terribly important, but knowing the time period is important. So you don't need to know individual things like when Cherry's study came out, which was 1953. We talked about it a little bit more today when we talked about dichotic listening task, but you don't really need to know when cognitive psychology by Neisser came out. Like you just need to know that was one of the events of the quote-unquote cognitive revolution. Okay, does that make sense? So not individual dates, but time periods. Prototype theory. I think that'll round us out on on the 4 bottom up. Oh wait, no, you haven't asked about template matching theory. So prototype. We have, according to this theory, a series of prototypes. Whenever we come across a new object, we store a new typical member, if that's the only member of the category that we've ever seen. So when you first are growing up and you see a four-legged creature and your mom and dad or other parent call it a dog. You're like, oh, that's a dog, cool. And then you come up across another four-legged creature and you call that a dog. It's because your prototype of your dog, of dog, was a four-legged furry creature, okay, of not very large size, relatively speaking, okay? And so every other furry four-legged creature becomes a dog because that fits your prototype. As you get older and more sophisticated, you start you start molding what your prototypes are for any given category of object or thing. This leads to far fewer actual mental representations for every member of a category. So if I say bird, you create a mental image of bird in your prototype, whatever that prototype is. It's probably not an ostrich, though. It's probably not a penguin, unless you're from Patagonia or something. Then maybe it is a penguin. But less frequent birds don't fit prototypes. Okay. And prototype theory came about because template matching theory said that we have all of these templates for all of these things that we come across that we need to perceive, and it just doesn't fit a cognitive efficiency model idea. So that's what prototypes are. Pelicans, well, they're close. You know, they have a huge beak and pouch, and, you know, they'll carry fish for you. You know, the pelican from Finding Nemo. Pelican. Just one more announcement. If you are watching and you are in my COG class and you haven't spoken chat, if you want to get extra credit, you need to say something in chat and let me know that you are in chat. Oh, hi, Dr. Xtar, Dr. Xtar. Not from class, but cool stuff though. Thanks, man. Or woman. My students will tell you that I'm painfully awkward, so. But thanks for coming by. There'll be more of these. Probably be on for another 15 minutes or so if you have more questions. On future quizzes, there'll be a little bit more content, so these will, I'm sure there'll be quite a bit more. That is, unless every one of you hated this, and then we won't do it again. Viewpoint invariance, why AI can't distinguish between a CD and a lid, or was that another concept? I believe the book author used that for yes, viewpoint invariance, but as a feature of the inverse projection problem. Okay, well, I'm glad one person likes it. Oh, I knew you were joking, Jesse. It's cool. You're good. You're good. Sorry, I'm going through puberty right now. You're good. Cool. Well, I appreciate it, everyone. I'm going to be doing it with other classes too, but you're my first class this semester that's getting a quiz first. So, man, it's late. You're the first one's getting a quiz, so it's like I said, you're my guinea pigs. But with the I want to say fifth of you from the class who are in or were in at one point. I'm glad it worked out. And for and the great thing about Twitch is that, this will be saved as a video, and people can come watch it on Twitch, or I'll upload it to YouTube, and you can look at the stuff there. So I'm trying to repeat questions, because chat won't be there if it goes on YouTube. I get the ability to do this because, like I said, my wife's working upstairs, so she wouldn't be paying attention to me anyways. And kids are in bed. She normally works on Wednesdays, so it would have been tomorrow night, but she told me this morning that she was working tonight, so I'm like, well, I'll ask you guys today. Yeah, I will be putting it on YouTube because Twitch does erase it. Thank you, sir. Definitely appreciate that. Yeah, I knew it was going to delete the VOD after 30 days, so I was going to go up on YouTube. Won't much help after Thursday for these guys, but, maybe in the future anybody wants to stumble on it. It's just, I have to figure out what to do with maybe put the chat in transcript and then put that in the description for the video on YouTube. I could do that. Wouldn't be time locked, but oh well. Now I'm just talking to fill some time till more questions come my way. Okay, why does the mind need to conserve attentional resources to inanimate objects versus animate? Just because taking in so much info would overload our brains? I'll answer your second question first, and I would say yes. Overall, attention has to be limited because attending to everything would be maddening. With our current, with the way our brains currently work, maybe not in the future when we get better at things, cognitively or whatever. But to answer your first question, I mentioned toward the end of talking about perception that a lot of our perception actually has to do with movement, because we move to interact with our environment, and our environment moves to interact with us. So, when we were hanging out on the African savannah and being chased by lions, in our very early history, those things were moving toward us very quickly, I might add. And so we had to, make sure we weren't in that path. And so we needed to see if those would change. Because if you think about it, or if you've seen, I don't know, maybe on Planet Earth or one of those nature shows, and the ones about big prey, Jesus, big predators, like big cats, they're really good at hiding from you and making sure their prey don't see them, right? And so we had to get really good at detecting movement, okay, in the smallest ways possible. And so when animate objects are moving, we'll catch that. Doesn't fall under change blindness. Unless we're not paying attention, even if that thing is moving in our field of vision, which is inattentional blindness, right? And so inanimate objects don't move on their own. Something has to work against them, right? There has to be some additional force to move a rock, right? Whether it's an earthquake, a bigger animal, wind, not rocks, but you know what I mean. Ice melting, glaciers, that sort of thing. Another force has to act on those. And so we don't really need to pay attention to the things that are changing for inanimate objects. It's not useful. It's not helpful. We can spend our attentional resources to things that are moving. Okay. And that also goes to the idea that what Stephanie is asking, physical regularities. Generally speaking, our world is fairly regular. Our environment's fairly regular. We can up is up, down is down. Things that are on the ground are probably on the ground for a reason. Things that are in the sky can probably be in the sky, flying. And so when it comes to physical regularities, we tend to spend most of our time looking at how nature has formed things in their natural way, for lack of a better word. So we like verticals, we like horizontals much better, much better than other angles, because that's just not how nature works. Sometimes things will be at oblique angles, but lots of times we don't see that. Trees are straight up and down. That rock formation that you see in the picture, it's straight up and down, okay? We know where the ground is, where the sky is on that one. Even if we don't have horizon information, we can tell. So when things are regular like that in our environment, we can perceive them a lot faster, a lot quicker. So Kat asks, template matching theory was the theory that was conceived not very useful because there are a ton of patterns, you can't perceive them at once. It's more like you have a template for everything that you've come across. And so as you grow older and your experience grows, you're going to have a template again, a new template, a new template, and a new template. And it's just going to become quite a bit crowded in your memory. And so prototype theory was developed in response to the inefficiency of that theory to condense the templates into a single template, for example, which is your prototype for whatever object you're talking about. Woo! Oh, the other thing with physical regularity I forgot too is light from above heuristic. For the longest time, until fire was discovered, / we did stuff with electricity. The only light source was the sun, and that's always above us, so to speak. Not at dusk and dawn, but you know what I mean. And so we can gather depth information from the light from above. So that's physical regularities, Stephanie. I hope that helps. Cool. Happy to help. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it, Dr. Xtar. Thanks for stopping by. I do have to note that he's probably gone now, but I do have to note that I did not come up with this idea on my own, but I thought I'd give it a try. I read an article that I think it was a chemistry professor at a huge university, Purdue maybe, I think somewhere in the Midwest, did it for review sessions for his chemistry classes, which were lectures of like 100 plus people. So this was a good thing for him, and he would draw on whiteboards and stuff like that, and then so they featured him in the Chronicle of Higher Education publication, and I read that and I was like, I can do that. I am a young hip person. Illusory contours. This is when you think things have contours, but they don't. Did I talk about it in class? I don't remember talking about it in class. Oh, yeah, I did. So it's part of closure. So if you look at the image of the circle and the triangle actually has contours when it actually doesn't. So you see the triangle, but in fact, there is no triangle. Think about that for a second. There is no triangle. There is no spoon on that one. There's no triangle. It's 3 Pac-Men chatting with each other. You create the contours of the triangle because the 3 Pac-Men are at the just right angle for the lines of their mouths to make a triangle. So that would be an illusory contour. The triangle is not on your retina. There's nothing there. There are 4 Pac-Men sharing some lunch. Yes. It could be that too. They could be trying to get the only thing in the center. I saw a lot of people do see the Pac-Man, and that's the great thing about this image is that it is 3 Pac-Men on your retina, and so not seeing it would be weird. It'd be something broken in your brain. Same thing with Pac-Man eating a very large Indeed. But again, the Dorito is invisible. Autobot thought your comment eating a very large Dorito was sexual. Kerrigan. Let's keep this is a family stream, okay? I approved it. I permitted it. Pac-Man eating. Anyways, moving on. The circle also, the circle of circles. So there is no circle on your retina, the larger circle, I should say, but there are 10, right? There are 10 individual circles on your retina, and we just make that contour there of those things. What I need to do is get a green screen. I need to get a green screen set up. And then I can be anywhere on the screen and be like, dancing, dancing. Who is Bulbasaur? You need to let me know who you are if you're in my class, so I can give you credit. I know you want that extra credit. Oh, you're not in my class. Okay, cool. Welcome to the stream. Since your rosin codes are discrete, isn't that kind of an extension of the natural perception of a triangle or circle in the normal case anyways? I'm not sure what you're getting at, but sure. I mean, you see the triangle because the Pac-Men are at the exact right places. If they were off just a little bit, you would still see the Pac-Men on your retina, but you probably wouldn't see a triangle. Yeah, that's the illusory contour. Yes. Yeah. You got it. You got the idea. Right, it's not continuous space. Exactly. Everyone in my class can disregard that, all of that. We didn't go through the retina stuff, so. But thanks for asking the question, Bulbasaur. It's a real triangle in the sense that a triangle is also an abstract concept, and you can imagine a triangle without a triangle actually being anywhere. You can close your eyes and see a triangle. It's real in the sense that triangles are real. Yeah, Kerrigan, I would say that with divided attention, it's more often than not, you are going to end up doing the multiple tasks, whether it's just both or more than two. You're going to end up doing those poorly, or less well, we'll say, less good, than if you were just focusing on one task at a time. And I mean, I can always go back to the well of driving, but I'll stop hammering home the driving. I mean, we're all bad drivers. We all do things that we shouldn't, and no, no, you're good, Bulbasaur. You're fine. I can always go back to that, but let's take studying and having a show on in the background. Okay, innocuous things, right? So when you're doing the studying, you're trying to learn verbal information, right? Trying to encode verbal information as best you can, and you're trying to elaborate and do all these other things that we'll talk about soon in class, but are on the door of my office. Well, you're trying to do all of that, but you have the show on in the background, right? Maybe it's The Office, for example. And you're like, "Ooh, I really love The Office," and it's the scene where Michael is doing a knock knock joke, because I saw this earlier. Michael wants to do a knock knock joke with Pam, and this is earlier in the show. Ed Helms is there though, so it's like mid I think third season maybe. Second or third season. He does a knock knock joke and he says he needs, he wants Pam to butter his bread, and then that devolves into Dwight smacking Michael in the face because he's the KGB, and then Jim taking that to an extreme and ending up smacking Dwight, and that's the "it's true" gif at the end where he's holding his and he goes, "It's true." Anyways, if you were curious about that. Anyway, you love that scene. Sorry, I was describing the scene for no reason. You love that scene, but you're studying at the same time. But you love that scene, so you're like, I want to study, but I also want to pay attention to the scene. Well, you're not going to actually encode anything that you're studying at that moment, and you're going to miss some parts from the scene. So you've ruined both situations by dividing your attention. So that's another example of divided attention not working. Now, you can divide your attention in a couple of ways. So because you can't hear it, but I have music playing in my headphones right now. So I'm not just talking to myself in a quiet room. You can't hear it, but I can also say stuff and still hear the music that I'm playing. So I'm dividing my attention somewhat. Still talking. It is 8:30 at night here, so that's the reason for my fits and starts. It's not that I'm trying to focus on what I'm listening to. I hope that helped. I think that does that help? You've got the right idea with divided attention. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. Of course, what you ought to do is different from what you do. So, don't take that as a directive, but know that cognitively, when you divide your attention, performance does decrease. Well, yeah, I'd have a problem shadowing the music and talking to you because that would require the same response. Talking. Shadowing is verbalizing what you're listening to. Oh, yeah. It is totally, I wouldn't say impossible, but it is unlikely that you can dedicate your attention to two novel tasks, because novel tasks, generally speaking, are going to require significant cognitive effort. And fill up your cognitive cup, your perceptual cup, to the point that you don't have room for another novel task, because that would require additional significant cognitive input. What's an example of two that can be done together? Well, I'm not saying that it is practically possible. I'm just saying that impossible is probably not the right word. You've got the right idea, but I don't have anything off the top of my head. Not right now. I could probably look something up though. Not right now. But thanks for the question. Could I attempt the ABC 123 task early today? You want me to do that at 8:30 at night? You are crazy. I'm not going to do it. But thanks for asking. I only do that to people who think they can multitask. I know I can't multitask. So I know I'm going to be slower at it. I'm glad you did it. That's good. It probably took you about a minute, right? Somewhere around there? So I'm going to do last call for questions for those of you who are left in chat. And so I'm going to I'll say about 5 more minutes of that for Any last questions? And then I'm going to go ahead and call the stream there. Any questions that come in the next 5 minutes, I will answer. If that goes beyond 8:45, that's okay, but the question needs to come in the next 5 minutes. Go ahead and email me, Bulbasaur, aswan@eureka.edu. I'll be happy to answer your questions. All right, Jesse, what would be an example of a good figure through pregnons? Well, there are several examples in the slides, but the one that you're actually looking at right now, well, both of them, Pac-Man eating the Dorito or the Circle of Circles, those are good figures. In the Helmholtz example of the blue rectangle occluding the red rectangle, B, the middle image of that shows the that's a good figure. B, not C. B, not C. Bulbasaur, you can also grab me on Twitter, Prof A Swan at Prof A Swan at Prof A Swan. You can DM me there too. Thanks, Kat. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. Hope I answered some of the stuff that you needed. You enjoyed yourself. Bulbasaur, no worries. No worries. I'll be doing more of these for this class among other classes. So if you want to subscribe, you'll know when I'm back live doing these things. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Couple more minutes for any last questions. And then it's time for bed. Man. It's time for ice cream, then bed, actually. I take that back. Yeah. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff going on. I just take breaks. Just make sure you're taking breaks. Doing things that are not school related. Like, while this is, quite passive, activity for many people doing this thing on Twitch, it's still school related, so it's not really a break. Play some video games, watch a movie, TV show. go to events on campus. Now, you see why cognitive psychology is required for the psych major. It didn't used to be, but it's life. It is life, so I was like, no, this has to be a required class. People gotta know what their minds are doing and why college is so hard. Elon Musk style task management, 5 minutes per task, then hop to the next, hop back to the early. It may work for him. He's got a lot of money and time, though. Okay, so if you're asking, this is some unsolicited advice, but try the Pomodoro method. There are plenty of Pomodoro apps out there that you can put on your phone or something. Usually, they're about 20 minutes a task with breaks. My podcast, thanks for asking, Kerrigan, it's on all major podcasting sites. So Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. You can download it directly from Podbean, which is where it's hosted. You can stream it from the website that it's on, which is CinemaPsych podcast. The CinemaPsych pod. Oh man, I don't even know my own website. CinemaPsychPod.swanpsych.com. You can stream it directly from there. I have a player for every post. A HTML5 player, so you can play it that way. Lots of ways to get it. But thanks for asking. New episode just dropped on Monday. Yesterday. That was yesterday. God, I don't even know it's Tuesday. The kind of strategy is I'm gonna. Oops. I think it's this. Hold on. I'm typing it for you, but I wanna. Oops. Yeah, Pomodoro technique. It was developed by. Well, it's a registered trademark of Francesco Cirillo, but this is how you spell it. Oh, Kerrigan got me already. Okay. And yeah, there are apps for your computer, there are apps for your phone. There's some task manager apps that will prevent you from doing other stuff in your phone, like go on Facebook or block notifications, things like that. Alrighty, I think I'm going to call that for the stream. Thanks for asking, Stephanie. It's got an orange logo. So if you're looking on iTunes podcast or Apple Podcasts on your phone, if you have an iPhone, it's got an orange logo. Face with reels in the head. If you know. That's what it is. Because there's another... I didn't realize this when I made the name. There's another CinemaPsych podcast, or CinemaPsych. They haven't updated in like more than a year, so I feel okay about it. I was bummed when I found them after I decided the name and made everything. Got somebody to make a logo for me on Fiverr. I was like, damn it! Damn it! But they were talking about characters for the 6 episodes that they did. We're actually talking about films. Castaway was the one that we just did, that dropped on Monday. It's really well done. there'll be another episode at the end of the month on Inception. That's some insider information, because I don't really tell anyone what the episodes are going to be beforehand. You just got some insider information. But I think I'm going to go ahead and call the stream there. Thanks everyone for coming out. All the random viewers, I love it. I was kind of hoping that was going to happen. Obviously not the main reason for doing it, but I enjoyed that quite a bit. This, again, will go up on YouTube. You can come back to Twitch over the next 30 days, which will be helpful for anyone who wants to come back and get the time-locked chat. That's the cool thing about it, is that the chat on replay plays with the video. Otherwise, just the video itself will go up on YouTube for in perpetuity. You can always come back and re-listen to what I said over the next couple days. Try not to cram my video in on Thursday morning. All right, everyone, have a good night. I will see some of you tomorrow. Toodaloo.